today?
The test Gimel. A questionable one of an androgen. May we not violate?
Wait, no. You're in the wrong. You're in the wrong masechta here, or in the wrong, or not in the wrong masechta, but you're in the wrong perik at least. We're in Kaf Gimel Hey.
I thought I had it right this time. Every morning I do the wrong thing on that thing. Okay. We may end to all the necessities of the deceased. We may anoint and rinse him, provided we do not move any of his limbs. We may pull the pillow from under him and lay him on the sand. In order that it lay him on the sand, in order that his body keep. We may bind up the jaw, not that it should close, but that it should not open any further. So too with a beam that broke. We may support it with a bench or with the side pieces of a bed, not that it should be raised, but that it should not sag any further. We may not close the eyes of the dead on the Sabbath, nor may we do so on a weekday at the moment of death. For whoever closes the eyes of a dying person at the moment of death is a murderer. If the darkness overtakes a person on the road, he may give his purse to a Gentile. If no Gentile is with him, he may place it on the donkey. When he reaches the outermost courtyard, he may remove those objects that may be handled on the Sabbath. And as for those that may be handled on the Sabbath, he may untie the ropes and allow the sacks to fall of themselves. We may untie bundles of straw before an animal, and we may scatter tender cedar boughs, but not triply bound bundles of straw. We may not shred neither fodder nor carobs before an animal, whether it is lightweight or heavyweight. Rabbi Yehuda permits crushing carobs for a lightweight animal. Close the store.
Okay. On the same subject of taking too much tircha when feeding animals, ein ovsinis hagamal. You're not allowed to stuff a camel. So apparently, this was the practice before they went on a long journey. They would stuff the camel with food, even if it didn't want to eat, to force it to eat if it was in order to prepare it for a long journey. The velo dorsin, and also what's the difference between ovsin and dorsin? Is hang on. So what is the I'm just looking at what's the difference between ovsin and dorsim. So give it a lot. So ovsim is giving it lots of food. So that's because of tircha yisera. So okay, so overfeeding it. So that's not forcing it. And dorsim is when they actually force feed the animal. Okay, aval mal'itin. What you can do is you are allowed to put the food into its mouth if the camel doesn't want to eat. You can put the food into its mouth, but and let it swallow by itself.
Yeah, this says here, if a camel is reluctant to eat, we may put food into its mouth, but only to a point from which you can still spit it out.
Mm-hmm.
Since one is not forcing it down the camel's throat, but merely putting it deep into the camel's mouth, this is not considered excessive toil. It is only considered excessive if one has to force it beyond the point from which he cannot spit.
Right. Okay, shkoyach. And mamrim es agalim. Same thing with the young calves, which is basically forcing food that's been mixed with water into their gullets, so they can't throw it up. Aval mal'itin, same thing. You can put the food into their mouths so that they to the point where they could still spit it out if they wanted to. Umahalkatin tarnagolin, and what you can also do is put the food into the beaks of the chickens. Okay, v'nosnin mai lemorsan. For the bran, if they're going to eat coarse bran, you're allowed to add water to soften it, but you can't mix it. Low goblim, because goblim that's now making if you're going to mix it around, make a paste out of it, that's a melacha of lash.
It doesn't sound very pleasant. It almost sounds like waterboarding. You know, it doesn't sound very nice at all.
But it's for animals.
Right.
Okay. And you can't put out water for bees and for birds in a dovecote, because that's tircha yisera again. You're putting yourself to a lot of effort for something where the bees and the birds can go and find for themselves. Okay. But what you can do is put before geese and chickens because they are they can't go out and look for water by themselves if they're inside your enclosure. And for the Herodian pigeons, which are also very domesticated and don't go looking out for their own stuff, they're relying more on their owner to bring them water. So when the animal's relying on you, then you can give them the water. But if they don't need you, then you shouldn't be using, wasting your Shabbos time getting food for them when they can look after themselves.
You put this thing in my mind. It's really terrible, especially for Yom Kippur. You said the birds and the bees. I was thinking.
Yes, I know. I heard that coming. But that's what the Mishna says. The Mishna says the birds and the bees.
Oh wow!
Did you see that? Did you see there's that one meme that was going around about we used to teach kids about the birds and the bees, but now we have to teach them about the birds and the birds and the bees and the bees and the birds that want to be bees and the bees that think they're birds and the birds that think they're bees and bees.
I haven't heard that one now. Now I heard it. Oh my gosh! All right. Unfortunately, that's what the world's come to.
Yeah. Mishna Daled, mechatchin es hadelu in lifnei habehema. So you're allowed to cut open a gourd in front of an animal because it's not yet edible. It's not easy to eat when it's still whole. So you're allowed to take the trouble of cutting up the gourd in front of it. Es hanavela lifnei klavim, and a dead animal, a nevela, you're allowed to cut up for the dog because it's a lot easier for the dog to get at the meat rather than trying to eat the whole nevela. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, im lo haisa nevela me'erev Shabbos asura, lefi she'ena min hamuchan. He says, listen, if this animal died on Shabbos, you can't. It's now muktzah because it wasn't food before Shabbos, and now it's become muktzah machmas nolad, I think. So since it wasn't prepared for animal food before Shabbos, then it's now muktzah. But interesting, the halacha does not follow Rabbi Yehuda over here, and if the animal died on Shabbos, then it's permitted already to cut it up for the dogs. So I'm interested, and I'm not entirely sure why Rabbi Yehuda is not the halacha, because I would have said this as well. I would have said, if this is something new that's come about on Shabbos, it should the same thing like a beitzah shenolda b'Shabbos. You might say, to be
right.
Okay. So that's what I would have thought, but apparently I'm wrong. Okay. Mishna, hey, now
it says, consequently, an animal that was alive at the onset of Shabbos is assumed to be set aside for slaughter after Shabbos, since it cannot be slaughtered on Shabbos. Therefore, it is muktzah and must remain so for the rest of Shabbos.
Right. That's Rabbi Yehuda.
That's that's the dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon with regard to carrying a lamp. There's a similar thing, whose flame is burnt out.
Okay. Mishnah Hay, Meferin Nadarim b'Shabbos. A husband or a father who has the right of hafaras nadarim on the wife or the daughter, if he has the neder on Shabbos, then he's allowed to do hafaras nadarim on Shabbos. Okay, because in any case he has only until the end of Shabbos in order to do the hafara. Remember, he's got that until the end of the day. Only it has to be on the day that he has of the vow that he annuls it. Okay, so if it's on Shabbos, then it's on Shabbos, and that's fine. And furthermore, if somebody has a neder that is not subject to hafara, but he realizes that let's say he took a neder from meat, and then he didn't, and then comes the Shabbos lunch, and it's a beautiful chalent, and he's really regretting this neder that he had from meat. So he wants to go and ask a shalas chacham. He wants to get hataras nadarim because this is a Torah Shabbos, so he can go and get hataras nadarim on Shabbos. As a matter of fact, Lemaise, I remember doing this on Rosh Hashanah, not this past Rosh Hashanah, but in a previous year. We were having a kiddush in shul, and somebody from the shul said, look, he's in past it's been his practice to not eat at the kiddush because he doesn't want to eat before hearing shofar. But he got older, and he just really needed to eat. So Rav Haber convened a little beis din right then and there, and found him a Pesach, because he didn't realize that as he got older he was going to need to eat before, and we heard that. So we heard the neder, and we all said mutalach, and he went and had the kiddush, and that was on Rosh Hashanah. Okay, poker kenis hamaor. You're allowed to stop up a window. We learned about this windows before. We had the thing about the window stopper, where Rabbi Eliezer said it has to be hanging it has to be hanging and connected and not dragging on the ground. Where the Chachamim said no, that's we're not makbid on that. And we say again over here that you're allowed to stop up the window on Shabbos. Is not considered anything about binyan. And furthermore, you're even allowed to measure the matlis, and we're going to see what this case is. The matlis is a cloth, let's say, that touched a dead sheretz. And there's a shaila whether this cloth is big enough to convey tumah. Remember, it's you need a 3 finger breadths in a piece of cloth in order to convey tumah, or to contract tumah. So now you want to measure it because it's alasaf. So in order to know about the tumah, you're allowed to do this measurement on Shabbos. Normally we don't allow people to measure things on Shabbos because it's a gezerah, because shema yachtoch, it's a maseh chol, whatever it is. But for the sake of a mitzvah, you're allowed to measure. Further, also the mikveh. If you want to know if you can use a mikveh for Shabbos, and it's alasaf of whether or not it's arba'im sa'ah. And again, it's for a mitzvah, so you're allowed to measure it for the sake of the mitzvah. Maaseh b'mei aviv shel Rabbi Tzadok, and there was an occasion during the time of the father Rabbi Tzadok, b'mei Abba Shaul bin Botnis, shepakaku es hamaor b'tafiach v'kashu es hamikveh es hamekeda b'gemi leida im yesh b'gigis posech tefach im lav. So this whole maaseh, I mean, there are a lot of different explanations as to what this maaseh was, that they had to do all of this stuff together. But basically, there was a mace inside a part of a building where the roof had a crack in it. Now we learned that now it's useful to go through this again now that we've done oalos, because we know that if a room has got a crack that's more than a tefach, then the tumah can escape through the tefach, through the roof, and it doesn't transmit to the other side. Okay.
Right.
But they weren't sure if it was a tefach or not. Okay. And furthermore, there was a window going from that room into another room. And if it was less than a tefach crack in the ceiling, then the tumah would go through the hole in the wall. So while the person was dying in the room next door, they said, quickly, let's block up that window so that in case the crack isn't big enough, at least the tumah won't go into the next room. So they blocked up the window with a kli cheres, with its base facing into the room with a mace. Because remember, a kli cheres can't contract tumah from the outside. So they blocked it up with the base of a kli cheres. So basically, the mace was seeing the outside of the kli cheres, and that was sufficient to stop up the window and prevent tumah coming through there. Okay, and then they wanted, and in order to measure this crack in the ceiling, they now had to stick up a rod with a measuring thing to get up to the ceiling to see if it could get through. So they had to tie up this whole thing with a reed, and to see if there was a gap in there or not, and whether or not they could allow the kohanim into this side or whatever it was, whatever the maaseh was. They were allowed to do all these things on Shabbos to see if it had the posech tevach. And so from this maaseh we learned shepokakin, that you're allowed to stop up the window, umodadin, and you're allowed to do the measurements for kosherin, and you can even tie this. They had to tie this implement on together, as long as it's not a kesher shel kayam, as long as it's not a permanent knot. They were allowed to do this on Shabbos. Okay, the Hadran Halach Masechus Shabbos.
They could tie it up as long as it wasn't. They could tie it up on Shabbos.
That's right.
All right.
Okay, cool. Let's go back. Good Kesdalet.
Good Kesdalet.
That's what I got. Did I put my bookmark in the wrong place?
I probably did, but I have you test Gimel.
Second. Hold on a sec. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. It's Yud Test Dalet.
Dalit. Oh, maybe when I said before, I moved it. Okay. Um, you test Dalit. Okay. Um, one who had two infants, one to circumcise after Shabbos and one to circumcise on the Shabbos, and he forgot and circumcised the one who was to be circumcised after Shabbos on the Shabbos, he's liable. If he had one to circumcise before Shabbos and one to circumcise on Shabbos, and he forgot, circumcised the one who was to be circumcised before Shabbos and on that Shabbos, if Eliad declares him liable for a sin offering, but Reb Yeshua exempts him. Okay, so that's the moil that's liable for the katas.
That's
So what
correct.
about
He's the one who did. He did the malacha.
what about the baby? If it was done in the wrong time, it could be
Then they have
before.
to. So if they did it before, so then they would have to do hatafas dam on the 8th day.
Right. Okay. All right. An infant may be circumcised either on the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th day, not earlier or later. How is this? In the normal course, he is circumcised on the 8th. If he was born at twilight, he's circumcised on the 9th. Born at twilight on the eve of Shabbos, and if he's circumcised on the 10th, if a festival falls after Shabbos, he's circumcised on the 11th. In the case of 2 festival days of Rosh Hashanah, he is circumcised on the 12th. A sick infant may not circumcise until he recovers. There are the shreds of that invalidate the circumcision flesh that covers the large part of the corona, and he may not eat of truma. If he was fleshy, he must rectify it for appearance sake. If he circumcised but did not expose the circumcision, it is as if he did not circumcise.
Okay, I can't. Gimel Hey.
Let me just put this. Okay. Gimel, hey. What happened to my stuff here? Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. It's in the other one. Okay. Here we go. It's in the other one. Okay. A kettle that was removed from the fire, one may not add cold water to it to heat it up, but he may add to it or into a hot cup to make it lukewarm. A sealed pot or an ordinary pot which was removed from the fire while boiling may not add spices to them, but he may add spices into the bowl or into a tureen. Reb Yehuda says one may add spices to anything except something containing vinegar or brine. We may not place a utensil under a lamp to catch the dripping oil, but if he places it while it is yet day, it is permissible, and we may not benefit from it since it is not something prepared for Sabbath use. We may move a new lamp, but not an old one. And Reb Shimon says all lamps may be moved except a lamp burning on Shabbos. We may place a utensil under a lamp to catch sparks, but we may not place water in it because he extinguishes them. With what may we insulate hot food and what may we not insulate hot food? We may not insulate them neither with mark, nor with manure, with salt, nor with lime, nor with sand, either wet or dry, nor with straw, nor with grape skins, nor with flocking, nor with grasses when they are moist. But we may insulate hot food with them when they are dry. We may insulate hot food with clothing, with produce, with pigeon feathers, with carpenter's sawdust, or with fine flax combings. Rabbi Yehuda prohibits fine combings but permits coarse combings. Okay. Okay. Let me just see what I did here because I moved something the wrong way. Tomorrow we are on Kaf Aleph, and that's all only Kaf Aleph because we're in the second thing, right? We only have 2 in Shabbos tomorrow. Am I correct?
So what are you asking?
Tomorrow in Shabbos we are in Daled base tomorrow.
Daled base, correct.
Right. And that's all in my second volume.
Okay, yeah, you got 2 volumes of Shabbos, right?
Right. So
Right.
tomorrow I have Kuf Aleph.
That's right.
Right. Okay. So I was right. Okay. All right.
Okay. Trumas Ches Gimel.
And okay. someone, this is, oh, I did something wrong. Okay, as usual. If one was eating a cluster of grapes and he entered from the garden into the courtyard, Rabbi Eliezer says he may finish it, but Rabbi Yeshua says he may not finish it. And if it became dark on the eve of Shabbos, Rabbi Eliezer says he may finish it, but Rabbi Yeshua says he may not finish it. Dalet. If truma wine was found uncovered, it must be poured away, and needless to say, it's clean. 3 liquids are forbidden if they remain uncovered: water, wine, and milk. But all other liquids are permitted. How long must they have remained so as to become forbidden? The time it takes for the reptile to come from a nearby place and drink. The quantity of uncovered water sufficient for the venom to be offset, Rabbi Yossi says, in vessels any quantity on the ground, 40 sa'as. Okay, sounds appetizing.
Mikvahs.
What are you doing there?
Base Aleph.
Okay. All may slaughter and the slaughtering is invalid.
Nope, you're in Chulin. You're in Chulin. We're in Mikvahs here.
100% right. Okay. What did we say it was?
Mikvahs Base Aleph.
Base Aleph. If a tummy person went down to immerse himself, but there was a doubt whether he immersed himself or did not immerse himself, or alternately, if he definitely did immerse himself, there was a doubt whether there were 40 saw of water or not, or alternatively, there were 2 mikvos, one containing 40 saw and the other not, and he immersed himself in one of them but does not know in which one, these doubtful cases are adjudged tameh. If a mikvah was measured and found lacking all ritually poor foods that were prepared on its basis heretofore, whether in a private or in a public domain, are tameh. In regard to these words, in regard to what are these words said, only in a case of severe tumah. But in a case of mild tumah, for instance, one who ate tameh foods or drank tameh liquids, or whose head and greater part of his body entered into drawn water, or 3 lugim of drawn water fell over his head and greater part of his body, if he went down to immerse himself, but there is a doubt whether he immersed himself or did not immerse himself, or alternatively, even if he did immerse himself, there is doubt whether there was 40 saw of water or not. Alternatively, there were 2 mikvos, one containing 40 saw and the other not, and he immersed himself in one of them but doesn't know which one. These doubtful cases are adjudged tahor. Reb Yossi declares him tameh, and Reb Yossi says anything that he has a chazaka of tumah for is forever in his disqualified state until it is known that it became tahor. However, a doubtful case of whether it became tameh or whether he caused tumah is in a judge case, tahor.
Okay, you have the important distinction over here. Everyone agrees that if you have a tumah d'oraisa, then any suffix that comes up is a suffix d'oraisa.
Right.
Now the tumah kala, which you're talking about here, is a tumah d'rabanan. Okay, so
Right.
if somebody has a vadai tumah d'rabanan, Chachamim say this is and the suffix arises as to whether or not he was mataher. So then we say suffix d'rabanan lahakel. So we say he's tahor. But Rabbi Yossi says no, you can't do that because you've got a chazaka. The chazaka is that he's tameh. Okay, he's tameh d'rabanan, but nonetheless he's tameh. And if you don't know that you've removed him from this chazaka, then you have to just leave him on the chazaka. However, the halacha doesn't follow Rabbi Yossi. It follows the chachamim that we say safek d'rabanan lahakel. One more.
These are the cases of doubt pertaining to drawn water that the chachamim declared tahor. There is a doubt whether it fell into the mikvah or it did not fall. Or alternatively, even if it definitely did fall, there is doubt whether there was 40 saw in the mikvah, or whether there was not. Or alternatively, there were 2 mikvahs, one containing 40 saw and the other not, and it fell into one of them, but he doesn't know which one it fell into. These doubtful cases are adjudged tahor because there's something on which to depend. But if they each contain less than 40 saw and it fell into one of them, and he does not which one it fell into, this doubtful case is adjudged tameh because there is nothing to depend on.
Right. So this is the idea of tolin, is that when you have a din d'rabanan, and you have a suffix in this din d'rabanan, if you have some way of explaining away the story that there's a happy case where the ma'im she'uvin fell, but it fell into the mikvah that was already 40 sa'ah. So ma'im she'uvin into a 40 sa'ah doesn't hurt. So you can just say, okay, so that's what it is. Worst case is that I'm wrong and whatever. It's a suffix drabanan. But when you have the case where there is no happy story, then you can't say Tolin, oh, it probably went into the other one and I can go into this one. That's not called a happy story because something became puzzle. And that you can use Tolin in other dinim derabanan. I think we mentioned this before. Like let's say you have a basa b'chalav story that's derabanan, so chicken soup. And so let's say you've got a vegetable soup on the one side and a chicken soup on the other side, and the milk fell into one of them, but you don't know which one. So you can say, okay, Tolin, it went into the vegetable soup, and you can have the chicken soup. Because vegetable soup, it's fine. It's mutar to have the milk inside the vegetable soup. But if you have two chicken soups, you can't say, oh, it probably fell into that one, not into this one. That you can't do because that's not called a happy case.
Nice. Okay.
Okay. Now we can go into chulin, Aleph.
All may slaughter, and their slaughtering is valid, except a deaf mute, one who is mentally deranged or a minor, lest they bungle their slaughtering. But any of these who slaughtered with others watching them, their slaughtering is valid. That which a Gentile slaughters is nevela, and it defiles by carrying. If one slaughters at night, and it similarly is if a blind man slaughters, the slaughtering is valid. I assume that they're saying that the slaughtering is valid if someone's watching them. The same as before with the.
Well, if you check afterwards and you see that the shechita was good, then that's also valid.
If one slaughters on Shabbos or Yom Tov, even though he is liable to pay with his life, his slaughtering is valid. If one slaughters with a hand sickle, with a flint, or with a reed, his slaughtering is valid. And all may slaughter.
So that's dafka. If you slaughtered, if you've got like a serration or something like that, as long as if the serration is. And I think there was a machlokes Beis by Shammai. Is that in the Mishna? So that comes later. Right? So all these things are they're nonetheless smooth blades as long as they're smooth and sharp.
Right.
Carry on.
Right. Or with a reed, his slaughtering is valid. All may slaughter, and we may always slaughter. And we may slaughter with anything except with a harvesting sickle, a saw, teeth, or a nail, because they strangle. One who slaughters with a harvesting sickle may use a forward motion. Beis Shammai declares it invalid, and Beis Hillel declares it valid. But if they are smooth out its teeth, it is like a knife.
Right. So if you've got like the serration, you've got a serration where you feel the serration in one direction but not the other. So if he does the shechita in the direction where you don't feel the serration, as a matter of fact, we discover that the halacha is that both Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai agree that it's asur to eat this. But Beis Hillel have the kula and say it's not. At least it's not considered a nevela. It's not tameh, but it's still asur to eat it.
Yeah.
Whereas in Beis Shammai say this is nevela. It's got tumas nevela. And another exceptional thing which you also need to point out over there is that somebody shechts with his fingernail. That's different. It's different from the other cases because a person could sharpen his fingernail and do a chicken or something like that. But the problem is that it's got to be done with a knife. It can't be done with a part of your body.
I thought. What about with the
Malika? Malika is a specific thing. You can't learn anything from that. That's in the Beis HaMikdash. Malika is not shechita. It's the way of killing birds inside the Beis HaMikdash, but none of the dinim are the same as shechita.
We think of it as shechita, though. I think for some reason
so we have discussions about malika, about whether it's if you do a malika and the bird is discovered to be a treifa, it doesn't get saved from becoming an avela. Right. It does, because now you did a shechita which wasn't a shechita. Does that is it? Did the malika prevent it from becoming an avela? And I think the maskana that we came out with is no. It's a dial that at least if you shechted an animal that was treifa, then that's fine. That removes from it the tumas nevela, but it's still asur to eat. But the bird that you did malika, I don't think it escapes without being tameh. Okay, Gimel.
If one slaughters with the top ring and leaves over a handbreadth along its entire circumference, his slaughtering is valid. If Yossi by Yehuda says a hairbreadth along the greater part of its circumference, Greater part of a circumference. That's that. Okay.
So that's
right.
how much has to be shechted of the simanim. Yep. Okay.
I remember when I took this off the shelf yesterday, I said, "Oh, Chulin, that's going to be tough again. That's going to be." Okay.
Chulin was
We
the
have.
Masechta that we were doing when I had my first year in yeshiva. So that's my Girsa de Yankasa.
The base.
Nazir, hey Gimel.
Gimel. If someone who vowed to be a Nazir and petitioned the sage who declared it binding, he counts from the time the vow was made. If he inquired of a sage who permitted it and he had an animal set aside, it may go out and pasture with the flock. Patillo said to Beit Shammai, do you not admit that here where the consecration is an error, that it goes out and pastures with the flock? Beit Shammai said, do you not admit that if someone erred and called the ninth the 10th and the 10th the ninth, that the 11th the 10th, that each is sanctified? Beit Hillel said to him, no, it is the rod that makes it sacred. What if he erred and placed the rod upon the 8th or 12th?
It's not the rod it's not the rod that makes it kadosh. Carry on.
What if he erred and placed the rod upon the 8th or 12th? He has perhaps affected anything? Rather, Scripture would sanctify the 10th, also sanctify the 9th and the 11th. Someone who vowed to be a Nazir and went to bring his animal and found that it had been stolen, if he declared himself a Nazir before the animal had been stolen, he is a Nazir. If he declared himself after the animal was stolen, he is not a Nazir. And the error was made by Nachum the Mede when a group of Nazirim came up from the diaspora and found the temple destroyed. Nachum the Mede said to them, if you had known that the temple would be destroyed, would you have vowed to be a Nazirim? They answered him and said no. So Nachum the Mede released them. But when the matter came before the Chachamim, they said to him, anyone who declared himself a Nazir before the temple was destroyed is a Nazir, and after the temple was destroyed is not a Nazir. If there were people walking on the road and someone was coming toward them, and one of them said, I am a Nazir, and this is so-and-so, and another said, I am a Nazir, and this is not so-and-so, I am a Nazir that one of you is a Nazir, and that one of you is not a Nazir. That two of you are Nazirim, and all of them are Nazirim. But Beit Shammai said they all are Nazirim, but Beit Hillel says no one is a Nazir except he chose whose words are not fulfilled. Beit Tarfon says not one of them is a Nazir. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, that's us.
I have to go shopping today. I'm not looking forward to this. I'm still confused about the whole vegetable and fruit stuff and everything. I don't know what to do. And now people are coming out with all kind of things. You can't shop here. You got to shop over there. I don't understand. Best is only doing one thing or something, and Deal Bazol on Dolev is doing another thing. It's very confusing. You didn't see that notice?
No.
Something about Deal Bazol on Dolev